I thought I'd just forgotten my wallet. But when I slipped back into the house, I caught my wife bragging to her friend about how her lover did things I could only dream of. In that moment, I realized I'd been living a lie, and I wasn't going to walk away quietly. Some betrayals deserve more than heartbreak. They deserve consequences. Matt Walker never thought his marriage would end on a random Tuesday afternoon. He was 38, ran a web design business from his home office in Austin, and prided himself on being dependable. If Sarah needed anything, he was the first to show up. If something went wrong, he'd be the one to fix it. That was who he was: steady, reliable, the kind of man you could build a life with. But the thing about trust is that you don't notice it's gone until the floor caves in under your feet. That day started the way they all did. Matt left for a lunch meeting with a client across town. 20 minutes into the drive, he realized he'd left his wallet on the kitchen counter. He cursed under his breath and took the next exit to head home. It was a minor inconvenience, nothing that should have mattered. He'd been out of the house less than an hour. He pulled into the driveway, noticing Sarah's car still parked in the garage. Odd, he thought. She was usually at the office by now. Maybe she'd decided to work from home. He entered quietly, not out of suspicion but habit. Years of early mornings and late nights had taught him to move softly, to let her rest when she needed it. Halfway up the stairs, he heard her voice. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said them. Bright, excited, like a teenager whispering secrets. "Oh God, it was amazing," Sarah said, her tone half laughter, half confession. "I let him do things Matt could only dream of. I can't wait for our next date. And this time, I think I'll let him do even more." Matt stopped cold. His first instinct was that he'd misunderstood. Maybe she was reading a book to Rachel over the phone. Maybe it was some joke he'd walked in on halfway through. Then Rachel spoke, her voice tight. "You're insane. What if he finds out?" "Please," Sarah scoffed. "He's clueless. He still thinks I'm just tired from work." Something in Matt's chest went hollow. He took one more step up, just high enough to see them sitting on the couch. Rachel's expression pale, Sarah's face alight with satisfaction. He stepped fully into view. The words were out before he decided to say them. "Clueless? Go on. I'm curious. What else does your lover get that I don't?" Sarah's smile disappeared. Rachel looked like she was trying to vanish. For a few seconds, no one moved. Matt felt strangely calm. His hands weren't shaking. His heart wasn't racing. It was almost like he'd stepped outside his own body and was watching it happen to someone else. Sarah's mouth opened, but no words came. "I didn't mean it like that," she stammered eventually. "You meant it exactly like that," he said evenly. Rachel stood, clutching her purse to her chest. "I should go." "Don't worry," Matt said. "You'll both be out of my house soon enough." Sarah's eyes widened, but he was already turning away. He didn't yell. He didn't ask why. He didn't bother to listen to any excuses. He walked down the stairs to the kitchen table and sat in the same chair where he'd eaten breakfast that morning. The same chair where he'd once planned out anniversaries and vacations and a future he genuinely believed they shared. In that moment, he knew this wasn't just an affair. It was something meaner, something deliberate. She hadn't slipped up once and felt ashamed. She'd laughed about it. She'd made a game out of humiliating him behind his back. The thought didn't make him angry yet. It made him focused. He picked up his phone and opened a note app. The screen stared back blankly. He started typing one sentence at a time, as if drafting a checklist for a work project. Gather evidence. Secure finances. File for divorce. Protect business assets. Do not engage emotionally. He read the list twice, then locked his phone. Upstairs, the murmur of voices started again. Sarah's voice trying to sound calm, Rachel's hushed and urgent. He didn't care what they were saying. They could spin all the stories they wanted. But the next time they saw him, he wouldn't be the man they thought they knew. He had no interest in screaming matches or thrown objects. He had no plans to beg her to stay or ask how many times it had happened. He would finish this the way he did everything else in his life, methodically. When Sarah finally came downstairs, Rachel trailing behind her, Matt looked up. For a heartbeat, he wondered if she'd try to deny it, to pretend he'd misunderstood. But she didn't. She stood there, shoulders tense, and waited for him to speak. Instead, he got to his feet, took his keys from the bowl by the door, and said, "You'll be hearing from my attorney." Matt. He didn't wait to hear the rest. He walked out the front door into the bright Texas sun. He didn't look back. At that moment, he wasn't sure what the next days would look like. But he knew one thing: she'd made a fool of him for the last time. And when it was over, she wouldn't be the one holding the cards. Matt drove without a destination. He passed familiar streets and businesses he'd built websites for, landmarks of a life that suddenly felt hollow. He stopped in a grocery store parking lot, shut off the engine, and sat in silence. He thought about what Sarah had said. Not just the cheating, but the way she'd mocked him. As if she were proud of it. As if he was some oblivious idiot she could laugh about with her friends. He realized then he didn't feel sadness. He felt clarity. He tapped his phone screen, opened the note app again, and read his list. One item at a time, each felt necessary. Not just for closure, but to protect himself from the damage she was already willing to inflict. By the time he started the car again, he'd made a decision. He wasn't going to wait for her to come clean. He wasn't going to give her the chance to hide evidence or spin excuses. If she thought he was clueless, he would let her keep thinking it, just long enough to ensure she wouldn't walk away with everything he'd worked for. That evening, he came home at his usual time. He walked in with the same calm he'd left with. Sarah was in the kitchen, her phone on the counter. She glanced up, startled, but he didn't say anything. He set his keys in the bowl and went straight upstairs. He didn't sleep in their bedroom. Instead, he closed himself in the guest room and powered up his old laptop, the one she never bothered to check. He'd bought a burner phone a year ago, thinking he might need a backup line for work. He never activated it, but it turned out to be exactly the tool he needed. He started by pulling up a reputable background search service. Using credentials Sarah had stored in their shared cloud account, he accessed her phone backups. Within minutes, he had a timeline of her calls and messages. Deleted photos. Hotel confirmations. The evidence was worse than he'd expected. There were messages sent while he was sitting across the table from her. Photos she'd taken in hotel rooms on nights she'd claimed she was working late. Voice notes with details he would never have asked to hear. He scrolled through each file, his mind steady. If she could plan this betrayal so meticulously, he could plan his exit the same way. When he finished, he organized everything into folders labeled by date and type. He backed them up in 3 separate cloud accounts and onto a flash drive. Then he closed the laptop, locked it in the bottom drawer of the guest room dresser, and lay down without bothering to change clothes. He didn't sleep much, but he didn't feel the confusion or desperation he'd expected. Instead, there was only purpose. The next morning, he rose before sunrise. He brewed coffee and sat at the kitchen table while Sarah came downstairs, acting like nothing had happened. She smiled, wished him good morning, and started talking about her plans for the day. He listened, expression neutral. When she finally paused, he stood, poured out his coffee, and said, "I've got errands. Don't wait up." He left before she could reply. His first stop was his attorney's office. He'd worked with Tom Garvey for years on business contracts. When Tom read through the printed transcripts and copies of photos, he didn't ask many questions. He simply said, "We'll file on grounds of adultery. If you're ready to proceed, I'll have the paperwork prepared by the end of the week." "Do it," Matt said. Tom explained the steps: freezing joint accounts, transferring the business income to an LLC he controlled, ensuring Sarah couldn't leverage shared assets to drag out the process. Every move was legal, precise, and designed to protect Matt's future. By noon, Matt had signed everything necessary to start the process. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt prepared. When he returned home, Sarah was already gone, probably at work or wherever she went when she needed to pretend she was someone else. He spent the afternoon on calls with the bank, updating his passwords, removing her access to anything she could use against him. He paid off the remainder of his car loan so she couldn't claim partial ownership. He notified his accountant to prepare updated financial statements. When she came home that evening, he was in the living room watching a documentary. She seemed hesitant, maybe aware something had shifted. "You're being quiet," she said finally. "I've had a lot on my mind," he replied. She studied him for a moment, then forced a smile. "I thought maybe we could order in. Thai? You like that place on Lincoln?" He nodded. "Sure. Good idea." If she felt relieved, she didn't show it. She placed the order, and for the next hour, they sat across from each other making small talk. She talked about her coworker's engagement, the weather, a movie she wanted to see. He nodded at the right times, answered when she asked questions. but every word she said sounded thin, like a stranger reading a script. When the food arrived, she set it out carefully as if she believed a nice dinner could erase what she'd done. Matt didn't argue. He let her pretend. After they finished eating, she leaned back in her chair. "I know things have been tense," she said slowly. "Maybe we could talk about it. I want to fix this." Matt looked at her, measuring how sincere she sounded. He wondered if she believed it herself or if this was just another performance. "Let's not," he said calmly. She blinked. "Why not?" "Because you don't fix something by lying about how it broke." He stood and began gathering the empty containers. She didn't follow him. That night, while she slept, Matt drafted a short email to a private investigator he'd used once before for a business matter. He attached photos of Sarah's car and the man she was meeting. He included dates, times, and addresses. "Confirm everything," he wrote. "I want documentation I can submit in court." He hit send, closed the laptop, and looked around the quiet guest room. It wasn't the home he'd pictured when they moved in, but it would be the place he planned his exit. He turned off the light and lay back, his mind already moving to the next step. This wasn't revenge. This was survival. Matt woke up before dawn the next day. He moved quietly through the house, gathering anything personal he didn't want her to touch: his birth certificate, the deed to the house, old family photos, the spare keys to his office. He packed them into a single box and carried it out to his car. By 7, he was driving to the private investigator's office. The investigator, a lean, middle-aged man named Greg Fulton, was already waiting. Matt handed over a folder of Sarah's messages and photos, then a list of hotels she'd visited. Greg flipped through the evidence with a detached professionalism. "You want full surveillance? Photos, timestamps, written reports?" "Yes," Matt said. "I want everything documented. I don't care how long it takes." Greg nodded. "Give me a week. You'll have what you need." Matt signed the contract, paid the retainer, and walked back out to his car feeling more grounded than he had in days. When he got home, Sarah was sitting in the living room scrolling on her phone. She looked up, studying him for any sign of what he was thinking. He offered none. "You were up early," she said carefully. "Had some things to handle," Matt replied. She didn't ask what. Instead, she tried to smooth the tension by suggesting they have dinner together again that night. He agreed, keeping his expression neutral. If she felt reassured, that was fine with him. He needed her to keep underestimating him. At 6:45 p.m., he got an email notification that made his chest tighten, not with fear, but resolve. Greg's team had already picked up the first photos. Sarah had driven straight from work to a hotel on the east side of town. A man was waiting in the lobby. The same man who appeared in her beach photos. The investigator included a time-stamped series of images, Sarah laughing as she greeted him, the two of them walking arm in arm toward the elevator. Matt closed the email, set his phone face down, and went to wash up for dinner. When she came home at 8:30, she looked tired but tried to smile like nothing had happened. He wondered if she'd ever feel genuine regret or if the performance would go on until the last possible moment. They ate together in silence. After she went to bed, Matt forwarded the photos to his attorney with a short note: "Here's your confirmation." The next morning, Tom called. "This is more than enough," he said. "I'll finalize the petition and attach the documentation. You'll be ready to file first thing Monday." "Good," Matt said. "Do it." By that afternoon, he had one more piece of leverage to secure. He called his friend Jeremy, who ran IT for a large accounting firm. Jeremy owed him a favor. "I need help locking down everything," Matt explained. "All personal accounts. Every password." Jeremy didn't ask questions. Within 2 hours, Matt had new credentials for his banking, insurance, and business services. He installed two-factor authentication on every system he owned. By Friday, everything Sarah could possibly use to drain his accounts or sabotage his work was locked down. That evening, she was waiting for him in the living room again. He could tell she was nervous. "Matt," she began, "I know you've been different lately." He said nothing. She hesitated. "I feel like you're pulling away. I don't know what's going on, but I want to fix it." He studied her face for any sign she meant it. If she did, it was too late. "You don't fix this," he said simply. She swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer. He stood, picked up his jacket, and left the house. He needed air, distance, anything to keep him from saying what he really thought. He drove aimlessly, ending up in a quiet strip mall parking lot. He sat there, thinking about the years they'd spent together. All the small compromises, the trust he'd given her freely. It felt almost unreal that it could all be destroyed by her deliberate choices. When he finally drove home, she was asleep or pretending to be. He lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. The next morning was Saturday. She told him she was meeting Rachel. He didn't argue. He just smiled and said, "Tell her I said hi." She blinked, surprised by his calm. "You're okay with me going out?" "Why wouldn't I be?" She seemed unsettled but didn't press further. An hour after she left, Matt got a notification from the tracking app installed in her car. She wasn't headed to Rachel's. She was driving downtown. By 9:18 p.m., Greg sent a fresh set of photos. Sarah and her lover stepping into a hotel suite together. The evidence was irrefutable now. Matt closed the message and set his phone aside. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel the relief of certainty. There would be no more doubt about what he had to do. Sunday passed in strained silence. She must have sensed something was coming because she kept hovering around him, offering coffee, asking if he wanted to talk. He gave her the same flat replies, "I'm fine. Just thinking." Inside, he was counting down the hours. Monday morning came. He woke before dawn, dressed, and drove straight to the courthouse. Tom was already there waiting on the steps. Matt handed over the signed documents, the printed photos, the call logs, and the transcripts. "It's all here," Tom said. Matt nodded. "File it." He signed the last form. Just like that, it was official, the divorce petition on grounds of adultery and emotional cruelty. He walked out into the cool morning air feeling something close to peace. The hardest part was over. He'd given her every chance to come clean, and she'd wasted it. By 10:01 a.m., he sent the email he'd drafted the night before. Subject: "You'll be served today. Don't come home." No anger. No pleading. Just a clean break. 10 minutes later, his phone started buzzing. Sarah calling over and over. He ignored each attempt. When she finally texted, "Matt, please, what is going on?" he sent a single reply. "I think you already know." He turned his phone off, leaned back in the driver's seat, and watched the sun rise over Austin. She'd made her choices. Now she could live with them. Matt drove straight home after sending the email. He parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, feeling the finality of it all. The house looked the same as it had yesterday, but everything inside had changed. He stepped out of the car and went inside to finish the last preparations. The first thing he did was remove Sarah's access to the garage door opener. He took her key card from the kitchen drawer and slipped it into his pocket. Next, he reset the security system codes and activated the new locks the installer had put in the week before. He walked from room to room, checking that he hadn't left anything she could use against him. The old photos and documents were already in storage. The business records were protected. The money was secured in an account she didn't know existed. By the time he finished, he felt ready. At 11:30 a.m., a process server texted to confirm the delivery. Sarah had been served in the parking lot outside her office. He imagined her standing there, holding the thick envelope with her name printed across the front, reading the words that ended their marriage. His phone began buzzing within minutes. Voicemails. Texts. All from her. The first few messages were frantic. "Matt, please answer. I don't understand. We can talk about this. Don't do anything rash. I love you." He didn't respond. At 1 p.m., the tone shifted. "You're being cruel. You didn't have to do this. This isn't fair. You blindsided me." He still said nothing. By mid-afternoon, her parents had called. He let it go to voicemail. He knew what they'd say, that he should have given her a chance, that marriage was about forgiveness. But he was done listening to excuses. Later that day, he drove to a FedEx store on the edge of town and mailed a small package. Inside was a flash drive containing the evidence, photos, messages, and audio recordings. He addressed it to her parents but didn't include a note. They deserved to know what she'd done. When he came home that evening, the house felt quiet. He turned on the TV and sat on the couch, watching a documentary he'd started days earlier. Halfway through, his phone buzzed again. "Matt, I'm outside. Please let me in." He looked through the front window. Sarah was standing on the porch, her expression panicked. He didn't open the door. Instead, he cracked it an inch and said, "You need to leave." "Can we talk?" she pleaded. "Please. Just 5 minutes." He shook his head. "You don't live here anymore. You can't just erase me," she said, her voice rising. "That's exactly what I'm doing." He closed the door before she could answer. She didn't leave right away. For nearly an hour, she sat on the porch, calling friends and family, trying to find someone who'd take her side. Eventually, she walked to her car and drove away. The next morning, Matt met Greg at a diner downtown. The investigator handed over a final binder, neatly organized with photos, logs, and receipts. "This is everything," Greg said. She was consistent. "Same man, same pattern." Matt nodded. "Thank you." He paid the balance and left a generous tip. He felt lighter as he stepped back into the parking lot. The hardest part was done. That afternoon, he delivered the binder to Tom's office. His attorney flipped through it, impressed by how thorough it was. "She won't contest this," Tom said. "And if she does, she'll lose." "Good," Matt replied. When he returned home, he found an envelope taped to the front door. It was from Sarah. He didn't bother to open it. He carried it straight to the trash. He spent the evening tying up the last details, closing joint credit cards, redirecting mail, removing her name from every bill. Each step was another reminder that he was no longer responsible for her choices. Later that night, he sat in the living room with a glass of water, feeling the silence settle around him. He realized it didn't feel empty. It felt clean. His phone buzzed again. Another message. "Matt, I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought you didn't care about me anymore. I thought I needed something different. I was wrong." He read it twice, then deleted it without replying. A day later, Sarah's parents called again. This time, they didn't leave a voicemail. He knew they had seen the evidence. He knew the calls weren't about defending her anymore. That evening, Sarah came to the house one last time. She didn't knock. She just sat in her car across the street, staring at the front door. Matt watched from the living room window, unseen. He didn't feel triumph. He didn't feel pity. He felt finished. Eventually, she drove away. In the days that followed, the calls and texts slowed. Friends who used to invite them both to dinner stopped reaching out to her. Even Rachel cut off contact after seeing what Sarah had done. Matt didn't gloat about it. He didn't share the details with anyone who didn't need to know. He just moved forward one step at a time. He met with a realtor about selling the house. He canceled plans he'd made months earlier with Sarah. He started running in the mornings again, feeling his strength return. When he looked in the mirror, he didn't see the man she had described: clueless, boring, disposable. He saw someone who refused to be broken by betrayal. And that, more than any legal victory, felt like real closure. A week passed without a single message or call. Matt felt the difference immediately. His mornings were calm. He drank his coffee without bracing for an argument or pretending everything was fine. The house, once crowded with reminders of Sarah, seemed to open up as if it were relieved to be free of her too. He kept moving forward. He met with his realtor again, signed the listing papers, and began packing up what he wanted to keep. Everything else, furniture, decor, old gifts, he arranged to have picked up for donation. One afternoon, as he was sorting boxes in the garage, he found a wedding photo tucked between old tax records. He looked at it for a moment, feeling no urge to keep it. He set it in the discard pile with the rest of the past. When the house finally went on the market, he rented a smaller place closer to his office. He didn't need the extra bedrooms or the memories attached to them. He just wanted space to start over without compromise. 2 weeks after the divorce papers were filed, the settlement came through. It was exactly what Tom had promised. Sarah had no claim to his business, no access to his accounts, and no right to stay in the house. She tried once to contest it. Her lawyer sent a letter requesting mediation. Tom forwarded it to Matt with a note: "We can reject this. Your case is solid." Matt didn't hesitate. Reject it. He didn't want negotiation. He didn't want a performance of regret. He wanted closure. A few days later, Tom called to confirm the paperwork was final. "It's over," Tom said. Matt exhaled. "Thank you." He meant it. Tom hadn't just handled the legal side, he'd kept Matt focused when everything felt like it was slipping away. The next day, Matt woke early and went for a run before sunrise. The air was humid and still, but he didn't mind. Each step felt like proof he was still here, still moving, and no longer weighed down by someone else's secrets. That evening, he came back to the rental house, showered, and made himself a simple dinner. He turned on some music and opened a book he'd been meaning to read. It was the most ordinary night he'd had in years, and he felt grateful for it. He was halfway through the first chapter when the doorbell rang. He knew who it was before he even stood up. He walked to the door, paused, and looked through the peephole. Sarah stood on the porch, arms crossed, shoulders slumped. She looked tired, smaller somehow. He opened the door only far enough to speak. "Why are you here?" he asked, voice calm. She looked up, her eyes unfocused, like she'd practiced a speech and forgotten the lines. "I don't know," she said finally. "I thought maybe we could talk." "About what?" She shook her head. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I know I destroyed everything. But I wanted you to know I'm sorry. Not because I lost things, but because I lost you." Matt listened without responding. He waited to feel anger or satisfaction, but he felt neither. "I don't know who I was when I did it," she continued. "I kept telling myself you didn't care. That you were always working, that you didn't see me. But the truth is, I think I was just looking for an excuse to do what I wanted." He stayed silent. She swallowed, her voice going quiet. "You were a good man. Better than I deserved. For a moment, the air seemed to settle between them. All the years, the memories, the pieces of a life they'd tried to build. He could see she wanted to believe that admitting regret would make a difference. It wouldn't. You closed this door a long time ago, he said steadily. I'm not opening it again. She blinked, fighting tears. So that's it? After everything? That's it, he replied. She stepped back as if the words had weight. I thought you might still care. He looked her in the eye. I do. I care enough not to let you hurt me again. She nodded once, slowly. Goodbye, Matt. He didn't say it back. He closed the door without a slam or a final word. He stood there for a moment, letting the quiet return. When he turned away, he felt no need to check the window to see if she was still there. Whether she stayed on the porch or drove away didn't matter anymore. Her choices were no longer his concern. That night, he slept without interruption. Over the next week, he focused on the life ahead. He transferred ownership of the business to the LLC, updated every account, and met with clients who'd become friends. He ran every morning. He made plans he could keep. He didn't tell many people what had happened. Those who needed to know already did. He didn't need validation or pity. He only needed the knowledge that he'd survived something meant to break him. One afternoon, as he was leaving the office, he paused at the door, looking out at the parking lot. He thought about how much of himself he'd given to a person who never valued it. And then he let it go. He stepped outside, breathing in the warm Texas air, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: relief. Sarah's name didn't cross his mind again. Matt didn't rebuild the life she had destroyed. He built a better one. And not once did he wish she was part of it.